Welcome to the Your Leadership Legacy podcast. My name is Tina Paulus-Krause, and I'm so excited to bring you this next podcast dedicated to you high performers out there who want to reinvent yourself, reinvent your business, maybe your career, all of it. This podcast is all about being dedicated to transformation and being the best possible leader of yourself and others that you can be in order to create a legacy that lives on. Welcome to Your Leadership Legacy. My name is Tina Paulus-Krause. I am the founder and CEO of True You Teams. And here we go. Hi, everyone. Welcome to this online series called Your Leadership Legacy. My name is Tina Paulus-Krause, and I am so super excited to bring you this next speaker in this series. Darcy is somebody that I have watched over the last couple of years as I was still in corporate, as she's grown her business. And I just admire you, Darcy, from afar. And I'm so impressed with what you're doing in not only the community, but just in the world. And so I'm very, very honored to have you on. I want to introduce you and have you introduce yourself and just tell us a little bit about what you've got going on and kind of your journey.
Thank you, Tina. It's an honor to be here and to be a part of your Legacy Leadership series. It's a tongue twister.
It kind of is.
So I'm right now currently own my own company, Darcy Luoma Consulting, and our whole focus is on creating high-performing people and teams. And we do that through coaching and speaking and consulting. And when my journey, when I think about it, when I was in college, I worked for a leadership consulting firm. And I was one of those people who took do you remember, Tina, those old overhead projectors that you had to have
right?
Right? Yeah. So I was the one who was putting the next overhead on the slide, but I was listening and watching everything and learning and absorbing, and I was hooked. And so for the next 25 years, I spent investing in a lot of my own both research and knowledge, as well as self-awareness around communication, how to handle conflict, how to be an effective leader, how to create a high-performing team. And it was in 2012 when Senator Cole, I was working for 12 years as the director of Senator Cole's office. And when he announced he was going to be retiring, that was my time to figure out what was next. And I hired a coach, and it was sort of an assumption that I would stay in the political sector, in government and nonprofits, education. And my coach asked me different questions. And she asked, if in 10 years you had no regrets, what would you do? Oh my gosh. And it was just like, it was permission. It was freedom. I said, I'd start my own company. So January 2nd, 2013 was my last day with the United States Senate. January 3rd, I launched my business, and I haven't looked back.
You haven't. It's been so amazing to watch your journey and just watch you helping people really discover this. I've always said if I could have gotten some of these tools and some of this information at that young age, my gosh, how much that would have changed everything.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about, I know that you have, you've got this model called Thoughtfully Fit that you take into organizations. Tell us a little bit about how that came to be and a little bit about what it is.
Yes, it came to be because I started to hear from so I've been an executive and a leadership coach and a life coach for, 15 years. And I started to hear from previous clients sort of organically. I'd run into them, or I'd see them at an event, and they'd say, Darcy, I was going to call you, and because I was stuck, or I had this obstacle, and I needed some coaching. These were former clients. We were done. And then I paused and I thought, well, wait a minute. What would Darcy do? She would ask me some thoughtful questions. She would help me create some new awareness. So what would she ask me? And so, Darcy, I started to ask myself questions that you would ask me, like, what's hard about this? And what do you want? And what are the obstacles? And how could you overcome those obstacles? And some version of this story, Tina, played out over and over again, where they'd say, and then I coached myself and I figured it out, and I took the actions that I needed. And it dawned on me that there's an ability here to help people learn the skills to coach themselves. And that's where I started to look at, okay, of the thousands of hours that I've worked with organizations and teams and individuals, what gets in the way? What are the obstacles and the hurdles? And I took years to research and to outline all of, and I had to do this because I had all these flip charts and Post-its, and we came through this research process to find that there are 6 hurdles that get in the way. 3 are internal with yourself, 3 are external in relationship with others. And
Right.
when we started to look at it, we realized that I'm always a big athlete, and I love being physically fit, and I love the challenge of it. And so we started to look at being thoughtfully fit and realized that when you look up thoughtful in the dictionary, there's 2 definitions. There's being mindful and intentional, right? A very internal definition. How do you show up in your life? And then there's being considerate and thoughtful of another. So there's the internal and the external, and that's how the model was born. And so we've got the 3 internal practices and the 3 external practices. And then at the core is pause, think, act, which is what my former clients were doing. They were pausing to think about questions and then acting from that place with new awareness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the power of the pause, right?
Yes.
It's crazy because, you know, my whole purpose for wanting to really put this show together is because I believe that leadership has changed, right? We've evolved in leadership over time because our world has changed. We're moving faster and faster. We're 24/7 connected. Change is constant. And if you're somebody who's kind of sitting back and not really paying attention to what's happening around, it's easy to get stuck. You mentioned getting stuck.
Yes.
So as a leader, and when we think about it in like leaving a leadership legacy, what happens when we get stuck? What's that difference moving into like leadership of tomorrow that we really need to focus in on? And I know that it's embedded within your model, but like, what's the one thing that keeps people stuck all the time?
Well, I think, I mean, there's lots of things, but so to bottom line, one of the things that I see that keeps people stuck is they are on autopilot. They're in their default mode. And what is getting in the way and what's keeping you stuck, you keep acting in the same way and the obstacle doesn't go away. And oftentimes I find with clients that whatever an obstacle is you're experiencing in your life, with a colleague, with your boss, with a vendor or client, that shows up in other places in your life.
And sometimes we don't even realize it, right? Like we don't even realize it.
Yes, you don't realize it. And so that's why when you can build your core, right, and pause and really think about why am I stuck? What is the conflict in this relationship that we can't seem to get past? How do I want it to look if our relationship was flourishing or thriving? And I say that because a lot of times people get stuck in relationships. They get stuck in patterns and conflict and toxins show up. And then if you can act from that place with the greater awareness and be more thoughtful and more intentional and more considerate, that's one of the ways you can then get unstuck.
Right. So you mentioned toxins when we're stuck. So give us some examples of what those toxins look like.
Oh, yeah. So there is research that talks about the team and relationship toxins that show up. Dr. Gottman, the Gottman Research Institute. And I see this all the time. As a matter of fact, it's one of the reasons I brought in to help with leaders and leadership teams and organizations, because the first toxin is there's blaming and criticism. You didn't, and finger pointing. Mm-hmm. That then evokes the next toxin, which is defensiveness. Well, I didn't do that because you didn't, because, right? It's just really a way of blaming someone or something else.
Right. And then we're in this spiral.
Yeah, exactly. So then you're in this spiral and in this dance of blaming and criticism and defensiveness and more blaming. And if that continues and is not addressed in a healthy way, it creates the third toxin, which is contempt. Mm-hmm. And contempt is the most poisonous because it goes from, Tina, I'm frustrated that you missed another deadline, to you're an idiot, right? It goes from the behavior to the person.
Right.
And then that can create the fourth toxin, which once somebody's emotionally flooded, then there's stonewalling. And that shows up in a lot of different ways. Like, the worst, most severe is you leave the room and slam the door, but there's also more subtle ways to stonewall. Being passive aggressive, not replying to an email, sitting in a meeting and, rolling your eyes and yeah.
Right. And so what's interesting is I talked about being completely connected now, right? And so I feel like the lines between home and work are way more blurred today than they have been in the past. And I love the concept of being your own best coach. So when we're not being our own best coach, and we're having issues at home, we take them into the workplace. When we're having issues in the workplace, we take them home. So it's this whole concept of like, it's not separate anymore. Our lives are so intertwined. So again, the leader legacy. So what does leaving a leadership legacy mean to you? What do those words mean?
It is about being thoughtful and intentional, and about making an impact in whatever way your gifts and talents in the world are designed for you to make your impact. For me, my legacy, I hope, is thoughtfully fit, and creating thoughtfully fit teams and cultures and individuals, people who are more intentional, so that, because when you do that, not only do you have less conflict and fewer regrets, it creates space to have more joy, to have more happiness, to have more energy, right? Because you're not like, oh, a lot of people, I just had a client recently said, you know, I realized, Darcy, that whole core, pause, think, act, yeah, I do it backwards. I act, and then I pause and think, why did I do that? And then I got to put all this energy into going and cleaning it up and making it right? So that's what my hope is for my leadership legacy and for other people's.
Yeah, absolutely. It's being intentional about how you're showing up in the world. And if you're somebody that you were talking about before that's like complacent about that, and they're not really understanding that they need to continue to develop, that's kind of where a lot of those toxins come in.
You're absolutely right. And that's why the metaphor being physically fit, if you run, I mean, you're very fit. If you go out and run a marathon, you're physically fit. But you can't ride that the rest of your life. Like, woo, back in 2001, I ran a marathon. I'm physically fit. The next day, you need to immediately already start to think about my journey for how, you know, am I walking? Am I doing yoga? And the same way with being thoughtfully fit is that it takes training and takes practice. You don't become complacent. You don't arrive. It's a journey to always look at, how am I interacting in every situation? How am I reacting and interacting so that it is the most thoughtful? And the good news is you can train and practice and become more thoughtfully fit.
Right. Yeah. Like when I talk about my transformation and my journey 4 years ago, I kind of got that wake up call, because we all, like, it feels like that when people start that journey, they get some kind of a wake up call. It's something that happens in their personal life, something that happens at work. And you go, oh my gosh, like, I'm not happy, or I've been living in this box. And you kind of go, okay, what now? And so for 4 years, I've been practicing these tools. And what you start to realize is exactly what you say. This is a forever game. This is something that I need to flex every single day. But the awareness of it and just understanding how to live more thoughtfully fit, both in mind, body, or all in mind, body, and spirit, is just such an amazing journey. So what would we have probably, go ahead. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to comment that I loved earlier that you made the connection that it is both personal and professional. It is at home and at work.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think so it leads into my next question. The people that are watching this are probably either people that want to be leaders. Maybe they don't have the title at work today, but they're really aspiring to be in a leadership role. Or they're people that are in leadership roles that are really stuck, like you say, and they're really trying to figure out, like, how do I move forward and really figure out how to get unstuck. And I love how you talk about the fact that it's like an everyday thing. So what piece of advice would you give somebody if they're just like, they're watching this and they're like, oh my God, I'm stuck, and this is kind of my wake up call. Now what?
Yeah. Well, whether you are a leader by title and have direct reports, or whether you are just leading your own life, there is an opportunity. You start where you are. And there is an opportunity to identify and to create some self-awareness on what is the theme, what are the obstacles that are getting in the way. So those obstacles that I saw, there were 6 themes or 6 obstacles. So it's first identifying what is it that I keep seeing over and over again that shows up, that gets in the way? Am I explosive and I get triggered when I'm blindsided and I'm shutting people down? Or am I really passive, like, no, I don't want to say anything, I don't want to rock the boat, which in the moment might not rock the boat, but of course you build up resentment and it festers. Right. Do you not have a growth mindset? Right? Do you just think, well, I can't do that, I can't become the next leader of this organization because I'm not a good public speaker? Yeah. Well, that's a fixed mindset, right? So I think that's the first key, is identifying what is it that is your obstacle, and then creating some awareness around how can I address this so that I can be more effective in my life.
Right. It's kind of like owning what you own. right? If, you know, it's bad behavior, right? We have bad behavior at every level of this planet, kind of a thing. And so how do we, you know, it's owning what you own. And so reaching out to people to get feedback, being able to take that feedback, not take it personally, understanding that everything is just feedback, it's neutral, but it's how you grow and how you develop. And
you know,
so
I think that's a great point, Tina. I'm sorry to interrupt, but sometimes there's a blind spot. Like, you don't know. I mean, when I was a leader in Senator Cole's office, I had no idea that what I was doing was inadvertently creating tension. So for instance, I don't remember things really well. And so how I compensate for that is I take really good notes, and I have systems and processes. Well, how that showed up in the workplace was I would oftentimes send an email with information so that I'd have it in writing. I would be able to go back instead of forgetting. Well, I found out that my colleagues and direct reports were saying, okay, I'm 6 feet away in the office and you're emailing me. You can't just come over and talk to me. Like, I was creating some of those toxins inadvertently because they thought she doesn't even want to come and talk to me. So that was a blind spot. And I love that you're highlighting that, yeah, own what you own, but you got to figure out what is it you own, and getting feedback might be an important part of that process.
yeah, I know for me personally, when I started to own what I owned, it was like, ouch, okay, right, ouch, I do that. I see that now. And so, but that's good. Once you have awareness, now you can kind of try and figure out a game plan of how you want to work on that and grow and develop.
That's right.
Yeah. So when we talk about leading yourself, what do you feel, what does that mean? Because you mentioned it, leadership is not just about title. And I so incredibly resonate with that and believe that we are leaders of our life personally, we are leaders of our life professionally. So when we talk about leading yourself, what does that mean to you?
Yeah, it's about being able to have the strength to consciously choose how you're showing up in every action, reaction, and interaction. It's not being a victim. It's not giving up your power. So it's not physical strength, it's mental strength to consciously choose. Because what your choice is then, of course, has consequences and has an impact in your relationships, in your work, in your marriage, wherever it is. And so I think the leaders are very intentional, very conscious and thoughtful on how they're showing up, as opposed to, again, just being on autopilot, just being in default mode. Yeah.
I love the intention part. It's very intentional. Like, personal growth, personal development is very, personally or professionally, is very intentional. You know, it's building an intentional plan, knowing exactly how you're going to do it, making sure you're tuning into it every day. How do you coach teams? Because here's what I find. It's awesome. People go to a class or a workshop, they spend a day in training, whatever it is, and then they walk away and go back into the real world, and they get caught back up in all the same old habits. So how do you coach people to stay resilient with their intentional plan?
Yes, I mean, one of the things that we do is go in. I mean, so I'm working with a company right now. I mean, lots of different companies, but one right now, I just got off a conference call. So their team has some conflict. They merged two different teams that came together. They did a reorganization. There's a culture in both of the teams that is not blending well. So first thing we did is that awareness. And I did individual interviews to say, here's the themes. Here's what's getting in the way of you guys being as high performing as you want. That then is used for a retreat where we come together and create a safe place for people to say, here's my fears, here's my frustrations, here are my hopes, here's the culture I want to create, what I hope, and then how do we want to handle conflict? Because if you can normalize, conflict isn't negative. Conflict is just an indication of something trying to happen. So if you can stay curious and really dig into what's trying to happen here and uncover that, and then address the conflict, because conflict's really healthy in teams and in relationships. You need to be able to express yourself and have disagreements in a healthy way. Where conflict becomes negative is when those toxins take over and it's not healthy, positive conflict, right? And then you identify, okay, what are our next steps? What's our action items, and how do we want to define and build accountability? If it's on a team, you might design it internally. If it's with a coach, you might design it with your coach, or you might say, I'm going to share this with my manager, or I'm going to tell my college roommate. We go for a walk every Sunday morning, and I'm going to build accountability there. So it always has to be this combination. When you are coaching yourself, whether it's to be a better leader or to be a better manager of a team, it's a combination of, you want to create new awareness and then create new actions and accountability.
Right. And then that accountability is the key, right? And if you can't hold yourself accountable, find somebody else to help hold you accountable.
Yeah, you bet.
Yeah, it makes a big difference. It makes a big difference. So I understand that you have a free gift for the people that are listening. Would you like to tell us a little bit about what that free gift is?
Yeah, when you reached out, Tina, what would be really valuable for your listeners? So we're looking at, having a strong core. Physically, when you have a strong core, you're less likely to get injured, right? Everything's easier. When you have a strong, thoughtfully fit core, your relationships, your life is easier. That core, pause, think, act. The way that you can build awareness in that think stage is to ask thoughtful questions. That's the key. So what I've designed is a thoughtful questions playbook, because you would think that's easy. Yeah, I can ask questions, but most people don't ask thoughtful questions. They're asking questions in the weeds. They're asking yes, no questions, right? So this playbook identifies things that I learned becoming a certified coach on how do you ask powerful, thought-provoking questions. They're open-ended. They start with what or how. Why questions create defensiveness, even if you don't mean to. Why didn't you get that report done? Why isn't the garbage out? Why are you home late? Right? They're short. They're 5 to 7 words or less, because when you have longer questions, they often include your own opinion. So I put together this playbook on do's and don'ts with some sample thought-provoking questions that your viewers and listeners can use and apply immediately to their own life and in their role professionally as a leader.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Thank you. Those questions, I think sometimes I'm a little old school. And so my hurdle that I had to get over was, don't fix this. Ask the open-ended questions. Don't fix. So it's that whole fix thing.
That's right. Oh, and I see that a lot. And in myself too, right? Because you want to provide value. But a lot of times providing value isn't giving the answer and solving and fixing. Providing value is asking that question to help the person come up with their own solution, because they're the expert in their own life.
Right. It's helping them understand their own vision and where they want to go and where they want to take their life, right?
Right. And then what are the obstacles? What's getting in the way of that? What are the hurdles?
Yeah.
And helping them uncover those blind spots and maybe pointing out some hard truths that they aren't realizing, like, oh, that's why I'm always in conflict, because I always handle it this way. And if I start to shift how I handle it, maybe the back end, the conflict will be lessened and mitigated.
Beautiful. So I have one last question, and it's around money blocks. Because what I find a lot, especially in women, is that we have this need to want to develop, but we tend to take care of everybody else, and we put ourselves last. So what advice do you have for the female leader out there, title or no title, that is watching this and saying, they can feel it. You can feel that in your gut when you're interested in this topic and you want more and you want to go further into this, but they have that money block that they don't want to spend the money to get the development or the coaching or whatever it is that they want. What advice would you give them?
Yeah, interesting. And I thought you were going to go a different direction in terms of money block. So the money block, first thing I thought of when you were laying that out is looking at the best investment you can make over your lifetime, period. One word: in yourself, you, right? By making that investment in your growth, in your self-awareness, whether it is attending webinars, whether it's listening to free podcasts, whether it's going and getting a coach, whatever it might be, the number one tool you have as a leader is your use of self. It doesn't matter. Even when I'm coaching, that's the most important tool I have with clients. It's not my toolbox of Wheel of Life and Future Self and all of these things that I learned in my programs. Yes, those are important, but none of that matters if I'm not showing up in a way that is thoughtful and intentional and present and fully in the moment, so that I can access my gut and I can self-manage. So I don't know if did that answer your question?
It exactly answers my question, because that's really what it is. It's, anytime there's an opportunity to spend money, all these things run through your mind, right? All these filters and all these decision points and stuff like that. And what I've found is that people in general, sometimes they like, oh, that's, it's $1,000. I don't want to invest in that coach, or it's, that conference is $500. That's too much. When it's like, no, you are worth that investment, and you grow by doing that and by getting out of your comfort zone and going to that stuff. So yes, you absolutely answer the question.
Yes, and so that's on the professional front, and even on the personal front, thinking about what are the obstacles to living the life you want, and would investing in yourself there help too, right?
Yeah.
So I invest in my gym because it provides support and accountability. I've got a triathlon coach. I get a massage every other week because it helps me invest in my body and not get injured. Other people are like, what? I've had a massage once in 5 years. Yeah, that's fine. That's no judgment. But I've found that investing in that myself in that way means I have the capacity to be able to live the life I want.
Yeah.
Better, right? Because of those investments.
Yeah, it's that intentionality again. It goes back to that. So beautiful. Thank you for that. I think we are probably at our time. So I want to thank you. Thank you for saying yes. When I was kind of thinking, okay, what 21 speakers do I want on this show? Your name was very much at the top of that list, because I so love what you're doing in the community. I so love the conversation that you are opening up all over the place, and just the work that you're doing. So thank you for that. Very grateful for it. And keep going. You're an amazing and fierce leader, and people notice. So
thank you so much, Tina. It's a pleasure.
You bet. All right, that is our time. I'm going to say goodbye. Thank you everyone for listening, and we will talk soon. Thanks, Darcy.
Take care. Bye-bye.
My name is Tina Paulus-Krause, and I thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed the show. Check out our programs and events at trueyouteams.com. And until next time, make it an amazing day.